No white person or persons may pass through the tribe's land without first obtaining their consent. Under the treaty, no white person or persons may pass through the tribe's land without first obtaining their consent.
Before each car enters the reservation, they ask, do you have a fever? Do you have a cough? Do you have an essential business?
So the too long didn't read version is this. We need to abolish whiteness. We need to send white people back to where they came from. We need to end colonization at all costs. Hey, what's up? I know that we don't have much time to sit around and listen to all this, so I'm gonna give you the quick rundown. Basically, the governor in South Dakota, her name is Noem, and she's a huge Trump supporter. She's very religious. She's against Native Americans because she's obviously racist. She's a colonizer. And so what she's doing right now is she's specifically going after the Cheyenne River Reservation and the Pine Ridge Reservation, who have both set up checkpoints on their plots of land, on their reservations, to make sure that people aren't bringing COVID-19 in. They set up checkpoints. All they're doing is monitoring traffic. However, Noem and the whites have a problem with that, so now they're trying to fuck with them. In this video, I'm gonna detail a little bit more about it. I'm gonna read a bunch of shit. If you are interested in that, stick around and listen to it. If not, that's what's going on in a nutshell. We must abolish whiteness at all costs. They are actively murdering our people. This is genocide. In today's video, we're gonna be talking about a lot of very serious subjects, a lot of things that are happening right now, including violence against indigenous people. This is the content warning. The people talked about in this video are going to include Noem, a fascist. They're going to include the Cheyenne River Chairman Harold Frazier. We also have the Oglala Sioux President Julian So we're talking about Julian, we're talking about Chairman Harold Frazier, and we're talking about Noem and the back and forth that Noem and her people, her whites, are having against our people over here who are simply trying to defend their own. This is the shit we keep fucking talking about. Noem, the governor of South Dakota, the state that's right next to mine. When I was younger, I used to want to move to Sioux Falls, which is a town about an hour away from here in South Dakota. It's right on the border of Minnesota, where I live, and South Dakota. Today we're talking about South Dakota and the governor there, Noem. Don't worry, we'll talk about the governor here in Minnesota, Tim Walz, in a minute. But more importantly, we're talking about Noem and her shit where she's going after Native American people specifically. Governor Noem's threat to sue two South Dakota tribes shows the callousness of a coronavirus plan, which seems to encourage exposure and prioritize the economy over the lives of at-risk natives. While states like California were quick to require lockdowns and shelter-in-place orders, others like South Dakota barely advised social distancing and never fully shut down. South Dakota Governor Noem, an avid Trump supporter, has been quoted as saying, "South Dakota is not New York." I remember when this happened. I remember when she said that. I heard about it. That was only a couple weeks ago. Now she's threatening the Cheyenne River Sioux and the Oglala Sioux tribes with legal action if they don't take down checkpoints meant to protect tribal members from people who might otherwise bring coronavirus to tribal lands. There are 9 native tribes, all belonging to the Oceti-Sakowin, or the Great Sioux Nation, within the boundaries of South Dakota. They predate not only South Dakota's statehood, but also the founding of the U.S. The state holds no authority over tribal lands in South Dakota, unless tribes expressly grant it to them. Several tribes in South Dakota vehemently disagree with Noem's lenient coronavirus plan, which seems to encourage exposure and prioritize the economy over the lives of those most at risk of dying from COVID-19, which are the elders and the immunocompromised. This has always hit home to me since the beginning of all this. My fiance is immunocompromised. In a letter dated April 23rd, the president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, Julian pleaded with Noem to issue a stay-at-home order, suspend eviction and utility shutoffs, and close non-essential businesses. The Oglala have been on lockdown for the last week, and it seems to be working. So far, there has only been one positive COVID-19 diagnosis on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and it was a non-member. Tribes know they are especially vulnerable to COVID-19. We natives are twice as likely as whites to have diabetes, which makes us susceptible to the disease. We also suffer from imposed poverty and lack the resources, including adequate medical equipment and facilities, to properly combat it. Even after the federal government promised to provide $8 billion in coronavirus relief to tribes, we had to take the Trump administration to court to stop them from giving our funding to corporations instead. Culturally, the Oceti-Sakowin hold elders in high regard too. We are bound by blood to do all we can to protect them from this new colonial scourge. We have witnessed what can happen to Native communities during the COVID-19 pandemic when they are not able to isolate and protect themselves. As of May 10th, more than 3,000 members of the Navajo Nation have contacted the disease and 100 have died. They have the third highest rate of novel coronavirus infections per capita in the US, behind New York and New Jersey. The Cheyenne River Sioux tribe began monitoring the borders of its reservation in the first week of April. It established these checkpoints to protect tribal members and those living on the Cheyenne River Indian Reservation against the spread of COVID-19. Noem, who has had a contentious relationship with tribes to the point of being banned from entering the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, has a big problem with Cheyenne River asserting their tribal sovereignty and monitoring traffic through their lands. In a news conference on April 24th, Noem claimed that she had spoken with CRST Chairman Harold Frazier about the checkpoints and freely admitted that the state of South Dakota does not have jurisdiction on tribal land. But just a few days later, she contradicted herself. We're working with the Department of the Interior, the BIA, and the Department of Justice on the issue. It's not accurate to say the Cheyenne River consulted with the state of South Dakota before they set up those checkpoints. That simply was not true, Noem argued. On the same day of Noem's press conference, Darrell LeCount, the director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, issued an ultimatum to Frazier, ordering him to consult with South Dakota, and if they didn't agree with the closure, to immediately reopen the highway for motorists or face serious consequences. Whether the BIA director and the governor are misunderstanding or deliberately mischaracterizing events, it's clear that Cheyenne River has not closed the highway. The checkpoints merely monitor traffic through the reservation. It's also a bold-faced lie to say Cheyenne River has not consulted with the state. The South Dakota Department of Transportation inspected the checkpoints and provided electrical road signage for them. I'm gonna say that again. The South Dakota Department of Transportation inspected the checkpoints and provided electrical road signage for them. Noem has left it up to South Dakota's counties and municipalities to develop COVID-19 regulations individually as needed. Again, for further context, it's the governor and then everyone below them in a state level. So the governor here is the head honcho of the state, and they're saying they're leaving it up to other people in the counties and other commissions to take care of their own. Just like the federal government is doing to the state government. LeCount, the fucking dude who gave them the ultimatum and say, hey, you got to do this shit or face serious consequences, who said that you guys didn't check with us, they did. They fucking checked with them. Frazier, who stood on the front lines at Standing Rock when the Dakota Access Pipeline was being forced through Lakota treaty lands, will not be intimidated by federal or state officials. He answered LeCount's threats with questions about who owns the highway in question. The Cheyenne River Sioux tribe has never agreed to grant the state a right-of-way across our land. I note that it is still our land within our reservation. Rather than respecting tribal sovereignty and the people of Cheyenne River, Noem doubled down on her anti-native reputation. She sent Frazier a nasty letter on Friday, threatening the tribe with legal action if they do not remove the checkpoint. Again, this is white people, this is whiteness, this is them thinking that they have something over us and they can tell us what the fuck to do. Frazier responded to Noem calmly and rationally, emphasizing the importance of working together, but still his ground. We will not apologize for being an island of safety in a sea of uncertainty and death, he said. He supported the tribe's rights to monitor traffic through their lands by citing the Fort Lamerick Treaty of 1868, a legally binding agreement between the Oseti-Sakoan and the federal government that the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld as the law. Under the treaty, no white person or persons may pass through the tribe's land without first obtaining their consent. Under the treaty, no white person or persons may pass through the tribe's land without first obtaining their consent. But Noem wasn't finished yet. She sent Bear Runner the same letter, demanding that the checkpoints the Oglala had likewise established be removed within 48 hours, or else. Bear Runner responded via Facebook, telling Noem that she underestimates the Oglala's dedication to protecting their people, and they are not moved by threats, as threats come from a position of weakness. The Oglala do not take kindly to threats and ultimatums, especially from Trump-inspired disciples who have no jurisdiction on their land. Neither the system of checkpoints on the Cheyenne River Reservation nor on the Pine Ridge Reservation are obstructing state or commercial functions, as Noem claims. Since Noem sent her letter, members of the Cheyenne River Sioux have begun guarding their borders, concerned about potential violence that Noem and her supporters may inflict, and vowing to protect their most vulnerable. Let's see how Noem defends her mean-spirited, ham-handed, unlawful attempt to make Cheyenne River endanger the lives of their people and their own ancestral homelands in court. Ruth Hopkins here on May 11th, 2020 wrote all this, and they continue to say, as a member of the Osage-Sakowin, I find it unconscionable that even in the face of imminent death during an earth-shattering pandemic, Noem and Trump's BIA appear to be more offended by being told no by tribes and concerned with asserting colonial dominance than abiding by treaty law under the Constitution. We will not assist the governor in normalizing mass death and using the people of South Dakota as guinea pigs. We are the people of Sitting Bull, Spotted Elk, and Crazy Horse. We were here before European invaders arrived, and we fully intend to be here after Western civilization has gone by the way of the dinosaur. Save lives rather than save face. For once, Noem would do well to close her mouth and listen.
How long are you going to let other people decide the future for your children? Are you not warriors?
So this article here was posted by refusefascism.org. I've never heard of him. Sioux nations take a righteous stand against anti-science Christian fascist governor of South Dakota. An important standoff is happening in South Dakota where Governor Kristi Noem, the Sarah Palin of the Prairie, has demanded that the Oglala Sioux and Cheyenne River Sioux reservation take down checkpoints on state highways on tribal land or face a lawsuit. The checkpoints are designed to protect the 30,000 residents of those two reservations from the COVID-19 pandemic, which has devastated other native communities. They temporarily ban non-residents from hunting or fishing on the land, issue health questionnaires to people coming and going, and impose some travel restrictions for non-essential activity. They have not stopped any state or commercial functions. If there were to be a COVID-19 outbreak on these reservations, they would have few hospital beds, personnel, or equipment to deal with that. To allow the virus to take hold on these reservations would be a genocidal death sentence. In her letter to the Sioux leaders, Noem complained that the two reservations did not follow the legal parameters set by the U.S. Department of Interior Bureau of Indian Affairs. In a statement oozing with condescension and hypocrisy, Noem said, "We are strongest when we work together." This includes our battle against COVID-19. Noem is a key representative of the Christian fascist movement. When she was a Tea Party aligned U.S. representative, Noem said she believed she was ordained by God to proselytize while she worked on policy. As governor, she called for a day of prayer and solemn mourning and pleas to heaven to protest the unspeakable crime of abortion, and last year signed into law 5 new abortion restrictions. She has coined the phrase riot boosting to attempt to criminalize protests against the Keystone Pipeline on native land. In her refusal to issue stay-at-home orders, she said it was up to individuals to decide whether to exercise their right to work, to worship, and to play. Consequently, the disease was allowed to spread to thousands and infect hundreds of workers at the Smithfield food plant. Noem parroted Trump's peddling of the drug hydroxychloroquine as a treatment with no scientific evidence. Both tribes have been righteously defiant of Governor Noem. Cheyenne River Chairman Harold Frazier wrote in a news release, "You continuing to interfere in our efforts to do what science and facts dictate seriously undermine our ability to protect everyone on the reservation." Oglala Sioux President Julian Bear Runner has also refused to take down the checkpoints and said, "The Oglala band is ready to stand against foreign intrusion in our daily lives. We have a prior, superior right to make our own lands and be governed by them." Kristi Noem's threats against the sovereignty borders of the Sioux nations cannot be separated from the ugly history of disease and genocide, an American manifest destiny that is one of the roots of this 21st century American fascism. European colonizers brought disease such as smallpox, measles, influenza, and bubonic plague, which decimated indigenous populations. While Trump and his own regime go on about building the wall and respecting our borders, the struggle of the South Dakota Sioux nations to institute their own health protocols remind us that this country was founded on genocide and the violating of borders on this continent and beyond. Reportedly, Noem has asked the federal government to intervene. So far, the Trump-Pence regime has not taken a position on the standoff, but we should remain alert to the development and write statements of support for the Oglala and Cheyenne River Sioux tribes as they take a rational and scientific stand to protect their communities from the unscientific, theocratic, and white supremacist fascism of Kristi Noem and her supporters. That includes the Republicans, every single one of them. That also includes all the Democrats. That includes all the politicians, all the people in power, people with money. I don't give a fuck who you are. That especially includes celebrities, influencers, people that have the right to say something, the people that have the resources and ability and platform to reach a wider audience that are not using that platform to talk about this thing and many things like it that should be talked about. They're all complicit in this, and every single one of them deserves the death that they bring upon others.